Hi, this is Moza Jacobs again for the bar spoken word again and again with someone who is also connected to the bar spoken word. Uh, Speaking to Stan Notte with a fantastic T-shirt. Stan, would you mind just showing, because you can only see the top, could you just show the rest of the picture?
Well, anyone who's an indie music fan will recognize that straight away as the
Oh,
front cover for Primal Scream's Screamadelica album. Classic indie dance record. Yeah.
okay.
Amazing piece of artwork. Yeah.
Okay, because you were saying that you only wear T-shirts that you make yourself.
Yeah, I made that decision about 4 years ago. This is the first T-shirt in 4 years, maybe five, that I've bought that I didn't design myself. And I could have quite easily have done this, but look, I was at the gig in Dublin and they were brilliant and it was a great night. So I treated myself and the band to a few royalties from the T-shirt purchase.
That's sweet. Yeah, because you're quite the Renaissance man in many ways. I mean, because you do so many different things. You're a poet, you're a writer, you're a theater maker, you're a graphic designer. You have a Did you have a printing firm or is that
I still do. Yeah, I still
still
do.
do? You have your own printing firm.
Yeah,
Wow,
all those words can be wrapped up in one word: insane.
insane,
Yeah. I'm
insane.
just, I mean, it took me a long time to be comfortable with it, but I'm just one of those people who likes doing lots of things. It used to drive me mad when I was younger. Um, but then I discovered that there's other people like that, and it's just who I am. So you just have to,
Why why
run
did
with
it
it.
drove you mad? Did you think you
Well,
should
no,
do
just
what you
that
wanted?
those messages you get in school and in work about consistency and you know staying with the one thing, and so again, some of it is just it's kind of an educational process. So I understand now that I'm an active learner. So when I'm involved in projects, I just want to get it going, get it started as quickly as I can, and then I take it so far, and then I lose interest. So, I've no interest in the kind of admin at the end of it, or if you were making a building, I wouldn't be that interested in the kind of finishing touches or the admin work that would have to go towards it. But I'd be mad eager about, how are we going to get the funding? Where are we going to locate it? All that kind of thing, the design process inside. But once all that's done, I just want to drift away. And so it's just
Okay.
I'm good at certain things, um, and I like new things. I particularly like new things. That's always been my way. It probably, I mean, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent about myself, but it probably didn't really come to the fore as a frustration until I'd left the Navy, because in the Navy, we were always doing lots of different things. And then when I left the Navy and you kind of found you had to go and find a job, and I was in the same job for quite a while, and then I started to get really frustrated. And when the creativity came along, which is give or take around the same time, that was the same thing, start writing short stories, and then wanted to write a novel and wanted to do other things, and thinking, why can't I just stick with the novel and get it done? But it's just who I am. And yeah, it's all good. I mean, it keeps me happy. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, it's funny that you said it about the Navy because I know very little about the Navy, but I would have thought that it was more like routine and not very creative and not very like new things all the time.
No, that's true to a certain degree. I mean, it's quite disciplined, and there's a fairly strong regimentation there. But the thing with the naval service is that you change jobs within that regularly. So you go to a ship and you spend 2 years on the ship, and lots of days there are different. And then you come in off the ship and you go to another job, and then you move jobs again, on the base. So I was in stores, so I would have worked in what we call barrack service, which is bedding, um, knives and forks, all that kind of thing. And I would have worked in rations, which is food, and I would have worked in ordnance, which was weaponry. And I was at sea, and we multiple different roles at sea, and you were always doing new courses, and you were always on the move to go and get supplies or whatever it was. So there's an awful lot of variety within the job, even though it's a regimented job, hasn't turned up at a certain time where a certain type of uniform. And with hindsight, that really suited me.
Okay,
That
interesting.
suited, yeah.
Because one of the roles that we haven't mentioned yet is your role for the 11th of October, which is the DeBarra's spoken word 10-year anniversary, as explained in the video with Nick Smith.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be the MC, the master of ceremonies, and that is something that that I've seen you do quite often here and there. You're really good at it. Can you say something about this?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I mean, it's something that again, compliments have been really tough for me for a long time, but I'm very comfortable where I am with that now. I mean, look, you look back in your life and you realize how lucky you were at times. So I was taught to narrate nativity plays when I was 5 or 6 years of age. I mean, I remember not a huge amount about it. I know that, we all, when I say we, I'm talking about my siblings, we all spoke really well. My mum was very keen on us all speaking very well. We spoke Queen's English, and they decided in whatever year that was, Jesus, if I go back to 1971-ish, that they would have somebody narrate the play, and they chose me, and so they taught me how to project my voice by hiding me in the corner of a classroom behind the door, and the teacher standing in the diagonally opposite corner of the room behind the television, because even then, all the classrooms in the school I went to England had big televisions, and I had to read the play so that he could hear me clearly. And
Who was
so I
this?
did that for one of the teachers. I can't
One of
remember
the
his name.
teachers. Okay, sorry,
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about kids standing in
no,
in
no, no, just one of the teachers. And so I narrated the play for maybe 4 years. That's my memory. I could be wrong on that. It might be slightly less. It could be slightly more. Um, and I don't ever remember having any fear around that. It's possible that I did, but I don't remember that. But that's such a strong grounding. And, I remember when I went into the Navy and we did I did my first main, what they call leadership courses in 1989. And as part of that, we had to do a presentation. And no, I was nervous doing it, but I wasn't like other people. Other people were absolutely terrified. And so, I found that relatively comfortable. And then, life has a lovely way of, is that this in a line, this Morissette line, isn't it? Life is a funny way of sneaking up on you. So I was involved with the union. We're not really supposed to call it a union, but I was. And a friend of mine wanted to run a public speaking course for people who were going to attend the conference as delegates for the Navy, so that they'd be more comfortable speaking from the podium. So he got funding for it, and then he went away, he organised, and then he rang me the week before and said, "Look, I've got funding for 10. I've only got 9. Is there any chance you do it?" And I literally said to him, "John, I don't need to do this course. I have no interest." And he said, "I know that." He said, "We all know you're pretty good in that area anyway, but just to fill the course and make sure it's, if we go for funding again, it looks really well." So I said, okay. It was a 2-day course, and it was run by a girl who actually used to be a neighbour of mine, Lucy. And it was based, which I didn't know at the time, on a Toastmasters format. She'd been a member of Toastmasters for years. Just in case anybody doesn't know what Toastmasters is, it's a worldwide organization that helps people with public speaking through certain set kind of tasks. So we did the course, and I really enjoyed it. And she said to me afterwards, "Have you ever thought about doing anything with, how well you can speak in public?" And I said, "No, it doesn't really appeal to me." And then they ran a second course, and because I'd enjoyed the first one so much, I went back into the second course. And what she did for the second course was gave us a brief to write a 7-minute speech on something that you had recently interacted with that that excited you. And I did it on the film Song for the Raggy Boy, which I had seen probably a couple of months beforehand. And again, no, all I did was stood up and did the 7-minute speech. And then they do this feedback session, and that was kind of overwhelming. And then she pulled me aside after the course and said to me, "I asked you the last time. I'm going to say to you this time, you really need to do something with this." So I went and I joined the Toastmasters Club, and I spent 10 years there and loved it. And that helped to develop my confidence. And I suppose what the thing for me now is, and I've said this to somebody recently, and this might sound a little bit weird. The place I was most comfortable growing up was on the football pitch, where you could just go and play and express yourself and forget all the shit that was going on in your life. I mean, there's far less shit going on in my life now, but I'm as comfortable now in an MC role as I was on the football pitch. It's just a space that I really enjoy. I do some prep for it, not a huge amount. I've learned to trust that ability that I have to improvise things, or deal with what's in front of you as it's there, rather than overthinking it. And I think that comes across when I'm to other people, which is great.
Yeah, it does come across. But when you were speaking, I thought, why would people be so nervous about public speaking? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think the first reason is they don't interact with it early enough in their lives. I mean, look, I always say this. I think the Irish education system is amazing in lots of ways, but you could also make an argument that they're teaching them all the wrong things. And I have a friend who makes a living out of teaching college graduates how to do presentations, because you can bluff your way through the entire education system in Ireland, including your college degree, without actually doing a presentation, and then come out and discover you're in a job where you're a member of a team who have to do presentations or whatever it is, and then they go and pay somebody to teach them how to do it. It's like learning to swim. It's like learning to drive. It's like lots of other things. The earlier you do it before the fears become too big, the easier it is. And I also think that some of it is kind of a genetic thing with Irish people about not being, not being showy or braggy and, trying to stay in the sidelines if you want. I think that's changing for the newer generations. But certainly in my time, the idea that you'd want to stand up in front of people was kind of considered, almost unacceptable if you want. What's interesting is, and I for a very short period, I taught public speaking, and I used to always start with the same thing. Every time they do a study in Ireland of people's greatest fears, public speaking is always number one. Always.
That's so
funny. And number two is death. So I used to say,
that's order.
if you apply that logically, that means if I ask you to come up here and stand in front of a group of people and speak for a minute or 2 minutes about yourself, and said, if you don't do that, I'm going to shoot you, you would say yes. So it just becomes a big fear in people's heads. And Toastmasters was such a huge learning curve for me, and I took so much out of it. And a lot of it is, other experienced people would say to you, for example, if you make a mistake during a presentation, the only person in the room who's aware of that is you, because nobody else knows what you had planned on presenting. But we have that internal critic that allows us to beat ourselves up for that one mistake. So that was a big learning, ignore the mistake, look at the positives. And the other one was, and I'll never forget this, and I used to use, and I still use this on a regular basis. When you stand up to speak in front of a group of people, especially, for your first time, second time, third time, we have this inner belief that people are going to laugh at us or think we're not very good at it, when in actual fact, the complete opposite is the truth. Almost everybody in that audience is rooting for you to do well. And as I often say to people, if there's somebody in the audience that isn't rooting for you to do well, then they're an asshole, and you don't really need to take any notice of what they think anyway. You know what I mean? So I just think it's a societal thing in Ireland, not just in Ireland.
That's not just Ireland. It's a very general thing, I think.
Not in America or Canada, though, which they're amazing.
They're amazing presentations.
Generally Americans and Canadians, but they do a lot of it, from very early days in school. They do a lot of it. They're encouraged to stand up. And I think the other thing is that I'm not sure how much this feeds into it, but certainly in the Irish education system, we don't celebrate, or when I was in school, we didn't celebrate what people were good at. It was kind of, the best in the class was a SWAT or the teacher's pet or whatever. And again, it's that kind of showing off thing. And I think that deters people from putting themselves in front of people, whereas in America, they tend to celebrate more what you're good at, maybe over the top in some ways. But like if you're the best football player in American football team, they all celebrate you. We don't tend to do that. But that might not be as big a deal as I think it is. But it's interesting for me.
Okay, Stan, thank you. Are you going to do some of your lovely poetry?
Tonight?
No, not tonight. On the 11th of October.
Yeah, I mean, look, generally when I'm emceeing, I'm not one of these people who goes into it thinking, okay, I have to do my poetry. But poetry nights, I think for an MC really needs to have at least one or two in their back pocket, so to speak. So when I emceed the All Ireland Slam final last November for Bhéal, I didn't do any of my poetry right until the very end, but you had one in your back pocket. Do you know what I mean? I think that's almost a prerequisite for a poet at this stage. If you're going to MC, then have something somewhere ready. And then for me, it's just about, does it feel like the right time to do it or not? And if it isn't, then you don't. But generally, you would end up doing one or two.
Yeah, I would encourage you. I'm a big fan of your poetry. And also, I was hoping that, Jack Kelleher is going to do AI. I think and it would be nice to sort of feed the AI some of your subtitles poetry.
Yeah, I haven't really had a lot of interaction with the AI thing. I've seen it in operation with one or two people showing it to me, and I missed the AI night at DeBarra's. So I'd be looking forward to that. You know, it is an interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it's a new. So there's a guy I know, and he recently had an idea for a book, and he plopped it into AI and kind of asked it for an outline, and it gave him what he thought was a really good outline. But he's still going to write the book. Do you know what I mean? So it was like,
well,
he gave a kind of certain plot points, if you want, you know, and it kind of gave him just, you know, this is how the order in which you'll introduce and suggested, you know, something here at the start and something here at the end. But like he said, you know, you can't imagine AI is ever going to, right now anyway, it's not going to write a 40,000 word book. It's going to give you an outline, which is great because, Jesus, for a writer, even the outline of a book can be.
Yeah, it's a bit like, which I used to translate, like, you know, kind of Mills and Booms and slightly steamier books.
Yeah.
And they have an absolute formula.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woman meets man that she hates and then falls madly in love with him. I mean, that's the whole
thing. Due to insane circumstances. Yeah. Yeah. But look, lots of things I mean, you know, film have formulas to certain degrees as well. You know, there's an idea in film, not that I have a huge experience in film, but there's an idea in film that, you know, you kind of introduce the story and around 20 minutes in something happens that kind of takes you off on the narrative. You know, in the same way that television has real formulaic stuff, you know, depending on what kind of television you're watching. So I watched this thing years ago about like TV detective stuff. This was back in the time now when Starsky and Hutch were around and those kind of people, you know. And it's still true to this day. So they had there's this, one of the formula things is that the good guys will chase the bad guys twice in the show. On the first occasion, the bad guys get away, and on the second occasion, they get caught. And it actually ruins watching that kind of television because you know what's coming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It would be funny if your friend wrote a 40,000 word book and then asked AI to write a 40,000 word book, because that it would do that in an instant. Just sort of cobble things together and just then compare them and see which one is better. I'm not sure. Yeah, if people want to read that, maybe they do. Okay.
Yeah, and again, I just one final thing. I mean, I think the thing from any writing thing for me is about the individual's voice. So, you know, you can read this. I mean, there's no new stories. You can read the same story over and over and over again. So you take Mills and Booms, it's the same story over and over again. But somebody could say a Mills and Booms plot and write it in their own voice, Kevin Barry or something like that. No, completely unique voice, and it could be a completely different book. And I don't know if AI can ever imitate that completely unique voice. I don't know, but that would be my thought process on it.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. But at the end of that evening, we were less afraid of AI than when we started. So that was good.
That's good news. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good news.
Okay. Well, thank you, Stan. I look forward to your emceeing and to your poetry on the 11th of October at the Bar Spoken Word at the back of the Bar's Folk Club in Clonakilty, Ireland, and it's part of the Cork Feel Good Festival.
Yeah, and just before I wrap up, I mean, I have to say that 10 years in existence is a major achievement, and I was at the very first night of DeBarra's. I went down with Paul Casey, and as you know, I've been a regular there since, not every month, but you know, at least 4 times a year, and it is just incredible to have something kept going for that period of time. And I know there was lots of people involved along the line, and yourself being, you know, if you want the ladies going back to Africa, Michael when they started, and there's been a whole lot of other people in between that have contributed. But it's brilliant to have it, and long may it last.
Okay, thank you very much. And you, some of the credit goes to yourself as part of the Bar Spoken Word.
Thank you very much.
Together with Nick, Margaret O'Regan, Lauren O'Donovan, and Catherine Ronan, and Paul McMahon. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.